It's a new day and a new unit. Here we are starting our persuasive writing unit with a look at persuasive writing itself and how it's different from informative writing. Your lesson objectives are that by the end of the lesson, you're going to be able to define persuasive writing and explain the goal of persuasive writing. You also need to be able to list and explain the elements of a persuasive writing paper. So your keywords to this end are persuasive writing, the goal of persuasion, elements of persuasive writing, including the claim, the evidence and reason, where we're avoiding fallacies, and the counterclaim. Straight out of the gate, persuasive writing is also known as argumentative writing. I don't like introducing that phrase to middle schoolers because they tend to think that then their writing is just an argument, and that's not what persuasive writing is. Your goal is to convince your reader to agree with a specific position or to take a specific action. Arguing is not very persuasive because it puts the other person on the defensive. So you really need to calmly and steadily persuade your reader to follow your lead. Your goal is to get them to do what you want. That means that we need to take a look at how persuasive writing is different from informative. Informative writing, you're just giving information. Persuasive writing, you have to convince the reader, so you're going to need a counterclaim and you have to avoid fallacies. Both of these writings use a thesis, body, and conclusion format, and they both have to rely on credible information, but how you're using that information and the type of information you're bringing out there is a different sort of process. So, the elements of persuasive writing are a clear claim. To effectively persuade your audience, you need to have a thesis that states your exact stance and what you want from your reader. Evidence and reason. You need to support your claim with credible, cited facts. And you need to avoid fallacies. These are errors in logic to convince your readers to agree with you. And you also need a counterclaim where you acknowledge and logically refute the opposing positions in order to strengthen your own claim by avoiding bias. We're going to come back and look at fallacies and even counterclaims on another lesson, but for right now, I want you to try identifying the elements of a persuasive essay in this example. A few limits on teenage drivers could save their lives. To the parents with teenagers, the 16th birthday is a time of both relief and fear. Relief that their children can help out with driving chores, fear that they could be injured or killed in an auto accident. On an average day in the USA, 10 teens die in accidents involving teen drivers. 3 factors, inexperience, night driving, and distractions caused when other teens are riding in the car, all compound the problem, the US Today analysis shows. This rite of passage need not be so deadly. Simple graduate licensing laws, which place conditions on young drivers, are already saving hundreds of lives a year. 46 states have them, but during the past few years, states stopped passing new restrictions. Not one imposes conditions to address all 3 risk factors, according to the analysis by USA Today and the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. The number of teen highway deaths would likely plummet if all states addressed all 3 factors. Age restrictions. Many states allow youths to receive learner's permits at 15, which often leads to a full license when they turn 16. This makes little sense. New data from the Insurance Institute shows that driving at age 16 is riskier than driving at 17, 18, or 19, and the fatal crash rate for 16-year-olds is 5 times that of drivers 20 and older. Inexperience is clearly one factor. Another possible explanation emerges from brain scan research. The region of the brain that weighs risks matures more slowly than previously thought. Generally after the teenage years. Postponing the learner's permit process until age 16 and then requiring at least 6 months of permit-restricted licensure to age 17, and that state has the nation's lowest death rates for 16-year-olds. In Britain, teens can't drive until they reach 17. In Germany, the driving age is 18. Nighttime conditions. Although 38 states impose night driving restrictions on young drivers, most are weak. Half of the limits don't start until midnight. Barring teen driving after 9 p.m. until the driver reaches the age of 18 would cover the times when teens are most likely to crash, according to the Institute. Passenger limits. A teen driver's risk of dying more than doubles when 2 or more male passengers are present. A restriction that limits young drivers to just 1 passenger until age 18 would remove distractions that contribute to deadly crashes. Some critics argue that laws prohibiting unrestricted driving until age 18 only push up the accident rate for 18-year-olds. They are simply wrong. The Institute data show the extra years of maturity make a difference. Others note accurately that while the number of deaths caused by 16-year-old drivers has declined, the number per 16-year-old drivers has not. Restrictions are simply keeping them from the roads. Still, lives are saved despite relatively weak laws. Yes, new conditions create inconveniences for parents and teens, including highly responsible new drivers, and new laws don't guarantee compliance. They can, however, fortify rules parents set themselves. Considering the daily carnage on the nation's roads, inconvenience would seem to be a small price for greater safety and peace of mind. So looking at that article that we just read through, I want you to identify what element of persuasive writing is this: the claim, evidence and reason, or the counterclaim. Take a moment and take your pick. What element is this? The claim, evidence and reason, or the counterclaim? Read it over, take your pick. And last but not least, what element is this one? The claim, evidence and reason, or the counterclaim? When we start writing persuasive writing, I do have a few tips for you. First, start by looking at the facts. Persuasive writing should evoke emotion and make somebody feel something, but it cannot be driven by opinions alone. Just because you feel or think a certain way does not actually make you right. And if you don't have facts to stand on, you've lost your argument before you've even begun to persuade your audience. 2, watch out for bias. You guys often avoid putting a counterclaim in because you think introducing the opposing ideas makes your argument weaker. The opposite is true. Acknowledging and countering someone else's claim makes your piece more trustworthy and avoids bias by showing all of the sides and why yours is right. You need to organize your evidence. Start with your weakest reason, then build to your strongest, because ending on that strong final note is more convincing than ending on a weak argument. And be clear and concise. State exactly what you mean, exactly what you want, and don't be wishy-washy. You can't have it both ways. It is this way, so your reader knows what they want and what you want from them. Persuasive writing relies on logic and evidence to convince your reader to agree with your claim or take a specific action. Let's get ready to do some persuading.